Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. So the NFL owners meetings are happening right now, and every year they meet and they talk about the rules, and then rumors fly that they might change one of these rules or they vote to confirm a rule change. And I'm gonna be honest, I feel like a lot of the reaction to these rule changes tends to be a tad bit over the top. Here's my point. Y'all remember hip drop tackles? Y'all remember how everybody was convinced that the rule on hip drop tackles was going to ruin the NFL, was going to be another roughing the passer type penalty that was going to affect games and change everything and be a thing that just destroys the NFL. And I'm not joking about this. Go back and look at the articles that were written last summer about the hip drop tackle. People could not shut up about this hip drop tackle, how bad of a rule it is, and how awful of a thing it is. And it always seems like it's done in a reaction to something, and the NFL can't get it together and all this stuff. And then the season happens, and we never hear about hip drop tackling being a problem. Like, the rule never became an issue. I think they called it maybe twice. And I think a lot of this is more people than I think they like to admit tend to overreact to rule changes. And look, a lot of this has to do with the fact that people don't trust NFL owners and people don't trust NFL referees, right? And that lack of trust, given that the owners are the ones who propose these rule changes, and the referees are the ones who have to enforce these rule changes, leads a certain air of skepticism that is kind of earned from the people who are in charge of all of these things. Like, I'm not saying I don't understand why there tends to be an overreaction, but sometimes it feels like the reaction doesn't really pay attention to what the rule is actually trying to do, right? Like, the whole thing with the hip drop tackle was they just don't want you hanging on somebody's body with your feet completely detached from the air in order to make a tackle. That ended up being a very easy thing for linebackers to adjust to and make tackles with. This year was a record year for defense, right? So you can't say it ruined defense and made offense easy when the whole storyline for all of last year was how hard it was for teams to get offense going and how much defense was dominating the narrative in the NFL season. And then the defensive-minded team won the Super Bowl, right? Like, this whole thing that people were convinced was going to ruin defensive football if it went through happened. And it's not related to the hip drop tackle rule, but ended up being the year of defense last year. We tend to overreact to anything coming out of owners' meetings. Most of the time, these rules are a lot like the kickoff change, where it's like, they changed something. We're going to talk about it for a little bit, but it's not really going to materially affect the game, right? Like, it's not going to really change the game in any significant way. There have been some rule changes that have changed the game in a significant way, right? The institution of instant replay, for example, has massively changed the game, right? Roughing the passer rules becoming more strict is something that has changed the game, but nothing has really been on the table over the last few years that has been of that level. Now, with all of that being said, what was coming out of the league meetings this year was the discourse around the Tush push. And I will say this. The reason I am glad that the Tush push didn't get banned and it narrowly avoided being banned. It was a 22-10 vote. NFL owners needed 24 votes in order to ban the tush push. So 2 owners did not vote for the tush push to be banned, and that is the reason why the tush push is not banned. Now, the reason I am happy that it did not get banned is simple. It's because I hate the approach that the NFL owners use to try to get some, I don't know if you call it legislation, but to get a new rule in place. It was very stupid, in my opinion. Because this whole thing wasn't about forward progress, right? This whole thing wasn't about how much assistance a runner can have, because I think there is a conversation to be had about that. This whole thing was about this one damn play that the Philadelphia Eagles run, right? Like it was, no pun intended, pushed as a tush push ban. Now people saw that for what it was. Hating, right? It was a lot of hating. Like, let's be real about what this was. It was a lot of hating. And the thing that frustrates me about this is that there are actual conversations about the tush push we can have if we're willing to not be stupid about the conversation, right? There are some conversations for it. There are some conversations against it that make sense, right? My opinion, if you're gonna legislate the tush push, right, it really matters how you're gonna enforce the banning of the tush push. And I don't think the NFL has a good plan to enforce a ban of the tush push. That's why I don't think it should be banned. I don't think the NFL is a good way to ban it. And I think doing anything about the tush push could just cause more harm than what was intended. And become something that you have to vote for down the line, because yeah, maybe the tush push isn't going to be a big deal in like 3-4 years, right? When no other team can really run it. But maybe the rule that you put in place to ban the tush push does affect things going forward. It's why you're going to try to ban it, or if you're going to try to limit an offense's ability to run that play, it has to be more about something larger than just that one play. Banning one play seems stupid, right? Like there was a time where the NBA wanted, well, the NBA did, no, not the NBA, the NCAA successfully banned dunking because Kareem could dunk, right? That looks stupid. If you just ban a specific play, it's pretty stupid. Now, that all being said, I do think we need to have a conversation about just how much assistance a runner should be allowed to have in short yardage situations, especially because you want to push your quarterback from behind, right? You want to set a tight end behind your quarterback and let that tight end push your quarterback forward. I don't really have a problem with that as long as the runner is still moving of their own free will, churning their legs, and active with the ball. I don't think that should be illegal. But there are times, and if you look up tush push highlights, where a tight end or a tackle will literally underarm grab Jalen Hurts and then drag him in to the end zone or to the first down marker. That feels illegal to me, right? I think that element of it, right? You should not be able to underarm grab a guy or basically tackle your own player and push them forward like that. You want to push them from behind while they're running forward? No problem with that. You can't grab somebody and then drag them. That feels illegal to me. Right? Like the weight room stuff and the argument that has been had about the tush push, right? If you want to stop it, get stronger. That matters if it's just a matter of like somebody pushing a guy from behind. But if he's getting grabbed and physically dragged into the end zone, then that's not weight room. That's just an unfair advantage, right? The NFL forward progress rules for offense already overwhelmingly leans in the favor of offense. Being able to have that level of assistance, right? Which is basically you can just drag a dead body across the first down line if you really wanted to. is kind of crazy. It feels more to me, and this is my opinion, like advancing a fumble than it does a football play. So you want to have a conversation about that specifically, like you can still run the tush push, right? You can still put a tight end behind Jalen Hurts, go in low, do the rugby scrum thing, and then push Jalen Hurts from behind and have the tush pushing flat, and still be able to run the play. It's just, hey man, you cannot grab him, lift him up off the ground, and then throw him. Like that shouldn't be. You shouldn't be allowed to lawn dart somebody. And sometimes when the Eagles run the play, they do stuff like that. And I think that's where it starts to feel unfair, right? But the NFL's inability to distinguish those two ideas meant that this rule was always going to be seen with a ton of skepticism, right? Because they didn't make it about, hey, tush push is fine, but sometimes there has to be limitations on how much you can help a runner, especially if that runner doesn't appear to be very active in the run itself, right? Like it feels like an abuse of forward progress at that point. That's my whole thing with the tush push. Is there an argument that can be made to limit the power of the tush push? Yes. Yes, there is. It's not all about weight room and toughness, right? Did the NFL go about this in a way where that was going to be what they handled? No, they went about this the stupidest way possible, right? And people reacted to it in kind. And luckily, this version of that rule did not get passed. I do think there will be a version of this rule that does get passed. And if, for me, I think the getting rid of the whole carry somebody across the line of scrimmage element of the tush push, I think that's fair game to get rid of. People could disagree with me on that. That's just how I feel about it. That being said, what I do find hilarious about this whole tush push thing is that this is a creation that the NFL has hysteria about. And the reason there's hysteria about the tush push is because the NFL created the hysteria about the tush push, right? In all reality, even though the tush push is incredibly successful, it's not that much more successful than a regular quarterback sneak, right? It is similarly, if not slightly more successful than a quarterback sneak. The NFL average, right, in third and fourth and short that result in a first down or a touchdown. This is not a perfect way of being able to measure the impact of the tush push, right? Because we're just talking about third and fourth and short plays. But given that that's what the heart of the argument is about, let's kind of discuss it, right? The NFL average is 75%, right? Success on those plays. The Eagles average is 77%. So this tush push that has been marketed as unstoppable is really only slightly more effective on average than whatever the rest of the league is doing. It's certainly not an unfair advantage that the Philadelphia Eagles have with the tush push, right? The problem with the tush push and the hysteria around the tush push is because it's been called the tush push and the Eagles have marketed it as this unstoppable play. And every time the Eagles do it, somebody goes on the broadcast on national TV and tells you how unstoppable this play is. And it makes everybody here unstoppable and think, well, is that fair? Should an offensive team be able to have a unstoppable play? And then they ask everybody their opinions about this play. And the truth is, stopping somebody on third and fourth and short is just really hard to do, regardless of whatever play call somebody's going to put in, because the advantage is going to lean overwhelmingly to the offense because forward progress rules just lean overwhelmingly in favor of the offense. this isn't the problem. The tush push isn't the problem, right? If your problem is that 3rd and 4th and short is way too easy to convert for NFL teams, well, then you have to look at different ways that NFL teams are able to get a yard. And the truth is that, well, it's just too easy for offense to get a yard because of forward progress and, other rules that help them get a yard, like the amount of assistance a player can get outside of just simply being pushed in the back, right? To get that extra yard. There's just too much of an advantage there for the offense. And maybe that needs to be nerfed a little bit. But the tush push itself is not this overwhelming advantage that the rest of the league doesn't have. The real question should be had is, hey, should 77 or 75% of all 3rd downs and shorts and all 4th and shorts be converted successfully? Is that an acceptable rate of conversion for the NFL? Or is that too easy for the NFL? I think it's a fine amount, right? If you want to adjust things along the edges, make it harder, I don't mind it, right? As much as the defense needs to get in the weight room, the offense should too, right? And they shouldn't be relying on just being able to carry a guy past the 1st down marker or something like that. So, I wouldn't mind if it got balanced out a little bit more, but it wouldn't really dramatically change the success rate of any kind of short yardage play, which again brings me back to why I think this whole hysteria is hilarious, is because the Eagles are being punished for marketing a quarterback sneak much better than anybody else has, right? They put all this stuff behind it. We got Jordan Mailata, and we learned how to do a rugby scrum, and Jalen Hurts, he be squatting 1,000 pounds, and then we just push behind those strong legs, and that makes us 2% better than the rest of the league. It's like, it's like when you really look at it, it's not that unstoppable. It's just a quarterback sneak play. And those plays are really hard to defend, regardless of, if it's Jalen Hurts or if it's Cam Newton or whatever it is. It's hard to stop, especially when your quarterback's as big as Jalen Hurts, right? It's why when your team gets a stop on 3rd or 4th and short, it's a huge deal because that doesn't happen a lot, right? So I think this is just a demonstration on how good marketing can create a hysteria that ends up being something that NFL teams actually feel the need to legislate, because don't think this is over. There's 22 votes for banning the tush push. They will bring this shit back onto the table next year and try to do it, and they probably will be successful next year in doing it. Right. And it's also interesting that the reason that you might be feeling that these short yardage plays are dominating more of the NFL meta is because teams are willing to go for it more often on 3rd and 4th and short, right? Or especially 4th and short, because teams are getting these analytics that tell them, hey, 70%, 75% of the time, you will be successful trying to get a yard here. You should try to get a yard. It's a safe bet, right? And I think that's why teams do it. Now, if you want to get rid of that and see less quarterback sneaks and see less short yardage plays, or see teams go for it less often, then I think, you make some adjustments to make forward progress not as useful for the offense as it is. But outside of doing anything about that, you're really not going to solve whatever you diagnose the problem to be, right? And I'm not necessarily sold that the success rates are so dominant on 3rd and 4th and short for NFL teams that something actually needs to be done. I just think that there's a bit more of an argument that could be made about certain elements of the tush push. But that's my thoughts on this whole thing, the whole fiasco with the tush push. It's going to probably come up again next year. And then the same hysteria is going to continue with this. And people are going to overreact about every rule change that comes out of the NFL owners meeting. But, oftentimes these things are big stories in May and not so big stories in October. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.